All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, and we are joined today by Seriah from Where Did the Road Go, a podcast that we have long listened to and long been friends with. And we've had Seriah on many times. We talk all kinds of stuff, UFOs, Bigfoot, missing 411, ancient civilizations. And here we are again. Thanks, Seriah. Thanks for joining us.
Hey. Yeah, well, you're joining me, too, since this is a swapcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're also on his show. That's right.
Simultaneously, although probably coming out at different times.
Yeah, a good old swapcast with Where Did the Road Go?
This is at least the second or third time we've done this as a swapcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So
it's good.
I don't think we've talked since last year.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's been...
I want to say September or October.
Yeah, it might be. You had Marty on. You had Marty on multiple times since we were on your show.
Yes. Well, I had him on my music show because Marty, of course, is a metalhead too.
Yeah, that's right.
Although our Venn diagram of music is probably only like 40%.
Ah, that's still a pretty good overlap.
Yeah. So I mean, that show he talked. That's up on the Last Exit archives. He talks about, all the stuff he doesn't talk about on your show, like his monster truck stuff, his life in general. So that's what we did on that show, along with him picking music.
Well, that's good. I mean, having him on and getting his take on that kind of stuff is great, especially considering what happened to him later.
Yeah, and
I know he's recovering. I would love to be able to get him back on someday.
Yeah,
no hoping, man. Yeah,
he did the show.
We were in the middle. We were in the middle of his, spookiest story never told, UFOs Part 95, whatever it was. Yeah, Part 2. Part 7 of Part 3 of Part 9 of Spooky Stories Ever Told, right. Whatever. Something I don't remember what it is. Yeah.
And I had him on with Mike Cloud to talk about Chris Bledsoe because I really didn't know that much about Bledsoe. I kind of dismissed him out of hand because of the associates he had at this point. But both him and Mike were very adamant that Chris's story was important, so I figured I'd have them come on and talk about it, and they did a great job.
Yeah? What associates?
Huh?
What associates do you mean?
Disclosure people, mainly.
Yeah, the disclosure people. Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. My question for you with Marty's stuff is like, did any of Marty's stuff change your mind on, or change how you look at the phenomenon at all? What do you think of that?
Like his stuff in general?
Yeah. His perspective.
Yes, certainly. I mean, it's not that different from my perspective, but there's things I didn't know that he brings up. Quite a bit of it that just added to all of that. So I can't tell you exactly what changed. It's just, because it's been a while since you've done a show with him. But pretty much every show I listen to with you and Marty, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. And it just kind of gets added into my overall picture of things. Because I don't have any claim as to what's going on. I don't know what this is. So it's just a matter of, aggregating information and seeing where connections are.
Yeah. I mean, that's my reaction to Marty's information as well, is like, I just get more confused. I started out thinking like I have no idea what's going on, and now I am really sure that I have no idea what's going on. Yeah.
That's about, then you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of people out there who... Go ahead.
It definitely doesn't seem to be as simple as, aliens visiting us in ships. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
There's almost no evidence that these things are extraterrestrial. It's just become the belief at some point. But like the more you look at it, the less you see anything that suggests extraterrestrial.
Yeah. The only suggestions that it was extraterrestrial came from earlier accounts of people talking to them, right? They'd claim they were from space. Yeah.
And that was the
Or
contactees.
the people recounting the stories would claim that these things told them they were from space. That's basically
Right.
what it was. Yeah.
And that was the contactees initially, and then of course when you get into all the hypnosis nonsense, that stuff was propagated. But I mean, the hypnosis is not a recovery tool, a memory recovery tool. It just isn't. So these people were suggestible, and they're going to someone like Bud Hopkins, who looks at researches UFO abduction. So obviously that's already in their head. I might have been abducted. What else happened when I saw this UFO? And then they go there, and he further implants, or not. He's not necessarily implanting it, but they're creating false memories based on what they believe happened, because hypnosis is very suggestible, and that's how it works. And once you have those false memories are stronger than real memories.
Yeah. Did you guys listen to the Joe Rogan interview with Hal Puthoff?
No.
I haven't listened to that one yet. Yeah. I need to.
I think that's the guy. I'm just looking at it right now.
Hal Puthoff is,
He's like he's a physicist. And he was like, he started out doing the, what are they called? The where you're seeing stuff from far away. Remote viewing studies. Yeah, why can't I think of that? Whatever. Anyways, that was a really interesting episode, and like hearing him talk about the possible physics involved was quite interesting, actually.
Yeah,
Like
he's one of those people.
How it can... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking about how it was reminding me of stuff that I learned from Marty about how people, like, there things that happen in your mind. Like, there's, I don't know, they're seeing stuff, but also having an experience that has some connection to their life or some lost one, somebody in their family or whatever.
Yeah.
So just, I don't know, just it was pretty interesting thinking about that and how physics could possibly work that way, and there's something going on with consciousness involved in all this. I don't know. It was interesting. I recommend it. It's a good episode.
Okay.
Puthoff's one of those people that I worry is partially giving us disinfo.
Yeah.
Like, not entirely. I think but he's always been involved on some level with a lot of these secret projects, and anyone who's involved with this stuff, in the aviary and all that stuff, it's just kind of like, I got to put a question mark there. Like, how much of what they're telling us is legit and how much of it is disinfo?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know how much of any of it to believe from anyone, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was one of your big questions with a lot of the stuff that Marty presented was, because he's giving us these long passages of things that people had said or written that were involved in this stuff, and you're like, but how can we take any of this at face value? Like, based on how this phenomena goes, like, everything is lying to you all of the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
Or they're being lied to. They're telling you the truth, but they were being deceived and lied to.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know.
No, I mean, that's the trickster aspect. And I think it's that we can't perceive this stuff for what it is. And it kind of co-creates what we believe it is. So if you expect aliens, you're going to get aliens. But it's when you do what Jacques Vallée did and you pull back and look at the archetype rather than the specific interpretations is when you start seeing the fact that there's something there. But no one is probably seeing exactly what that thing is, and it might be because we can't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But consciousness is definitely a big part of it. I mean, personally, I think it's what an Aboriginal culture would have called a shamanic awakening. But we don't have a way of factoring that into our lives, so it just becomes terrifying.
Yeah. Well, if they appear to me now, I'll have no idea what to co-create, so they'll just be a big blob of nothing. Because I know they're not aliens, but I have no idea what they are, so the co-creation won't work.
No, it'll work. It'll just be something completely ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, there are people who have seen cartoon characters. So, or it'll just be a human.
Yeah, there are some encounter reports that I've read that are just completely wild.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like strange, like hyper intelligent slugs.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
like with a brain on top. You know, just like something slithering along that's a brain, but it's a slug. And you're just like, what, dude? Like, what is this?
And I think those are the ones that people dismiss easiest, but are also the most convincing to me. Because if someone's going to make something up, they're going to make it up to seem like what people normally interpret this stuff as.
Yeah, I agree. And it was Jacques Vallée was saying the absurdity is the point, right? In some of these encounters, like, yeah. And I think Marty was saying it's like in some cases the absurdity seems to it puts you in a liminal state. It jolts you out of your matrix existence. So
Yeah.
it may in and of itself have a purpose to just complete. It has to shove you out of your comfort zone and put you in a state of mind where you're receptive to whatever it is, whatever lie they're trying to tell you at that point.
And it may be
that's what it always is.
It may not be a lie. It may just be the closest thing we can interpret to what they're trying to tell us.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like if we try to explain to our dog or a cat something, they sort of get it, but they really don't. You know, they'll be like, okay, he wants me to sit. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Oh, look, he gave me a treat. Okay, I'll sit when he gives me the treat. But they don't understand why they're doing it or what's going on.
Yeah.
And the cat is just like, F you, I'll do what I want.
Yep.
Yeah, the cats are the ones that are like, he's lying all the time.
Yeah, he's always lying.
I'll give you a treat. Yeah, okay. Give me treats anyway.
Yep.
I get my own treats.
I know where they are. I can open that cabinet. I had a cat do that once. We got these beef treats. My cat Nim, we got these beef treats. I think did we get them for him? Her? I mean, I think we did because she was having trouble eating. And they were like dried dog treats. So we broke them up and we gave them to her and she really liked them. And we put them up on top. We put them on the counter and she immediately got on the counter and tried to open it. So we put it on top of the refrigerator and she got to the top of the refrigerator and knocked it off and then they went everywhere and she just dropped down and started eating them. And we're like,
Yep.
okay, you're too smart. Stop.
Nim, that was the name of the cat.
Yep.
As
Name
in, like,
huh?
what is it? Was it named after?
There was a show called Surface years ago, probably late 90s or early 2000s that I really liked. And there was a creature in it I think they called it Nimrod or something initially, and then just shortened it to Nim. And
Nim,
I went,
okay,
I like that because it was like this sea serpent sort of creature.
Ah.
And it was
there
a
you
really
go. You named your cat after the serpent.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Surface was a really good show that they canceled. I think it was on NBC or something like that. But it was about an aquatic, if I remember, it's been a while, but I think it was an aquatic race of creatures that were actually changing the Earth.
Huh.
And at the end of the first season, you come to the realization that these things are literally almost like terraforming the Earth. And then they got canceled, so you have no idea where they were going with it.
Of course. That seems to be happening to a lot of series these days. The streaming services will pick something up, they'll run with it for a couple seasons, and then just drop it. And if you have the misfortune of enjoying one of them, you're screwed.
Unless it's on Apple TV. Apple TV, as much as I'm not a fan of Apple, Apple TV does real good at keeping their stuff going. I think the only thing that I was watching that they canceled was Time Bandits, and I understand why they canceled it.
I don't know that one.
Well, it was a remake of the Terry Gilliam movie.
I don't know, man. I had Apple TV for a little while, and it was like, they keep all these bad shows going. I'm just like, I don't want to watch any of this. They're still doing it.
The sci-fi stuff like Severance, Silo, Mythic Quest, which is partially made by the people who do It's Always Sunny, Invasion, For All Mankind. They're all sci-fi shows except for Mythic Quest.
For All Mankind, I started watching. That was good. But we canceled it. Yeah. I mean, we had other services, and we were just watching more stuff on the other ones, and we were like,
sure.
That's what really was going on.
I think Severance and Silo are probably the two best on there.
Yeah.
So okay, I'll have to make notes because I had not heard of any of those.
Me either. Only For All Mankind. That was the one we started watching. It was pretty good. It got a little drama-y for a while.
Yes.
I was like, give me the space.
Yeah.
Bring back the space.
Yep. I have been complaining, like I like hard sci-fi, and most of it is space opera. Mm-hmm. It's basically like, let's take all these problems that people have on Earth and put them in space.
Yes. Yeah.
That's basically the story. Now you have the same problems that you see in every other show, but in space.
That is totally true.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not here.
You have an oxygen and a gravity problem and all of your other problems.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
I'll take
it's like somebody's cheating on someone and somebody else is jealous, but also they're in space.
Everything's a relationship show, just in a different
That's right.
setting.
Yeah.
I've just started the Warhammer series, the Horus Rising.
Yeah, 30K. Yeah.
And it's I'm really digging this.
Yeah. Yeah, Warhammer is good.
Yeah. So I mean it's you're following some guy who's like, he basically has no emotions, so
Yeah.
he doesn't have those kind of problems.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's an interesting world. Just started the book like pretty much today. So
Do you know Warhammer at all, Seriah?
No, not even slightly.
Okay. Well, give us 7 hours one night, and I can give you a brief synopsis.
I think the last book I listened to was the Annihilation series. Have you seen the movie Annihilation?
No.
Really?
No, it doesn't sound familiar. Yeah.
Oh, you got to see Annihilation. It came out in like 2015 or 2016. The
Okay.
movie is better than the book, which is not usually the case.
Oh.
But it's about the movie, at least in the book, they're not really clear what it is. They kind of get into it in the third book, but in the movie, this meteor crashes to space and it brings a new form of life down. And this life starts changing everything around it and absorbing everything around it. And it creates this sort of area that they close off and they keep sending expeditions into, and it changes time, it changes everything as they go into it. It's very high weirdness sci-fi.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll check it out.
The book's a little dull, honestly, and a little short. And I kind of listened. Well, apparently what happened is the guy read the book and went, "Oh, I want to do the movie. I'm not going to reread the book. I'm going to take what I took from the book and turn it into a movie."
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
He made a much better movie than it was a book. I like the third book, actually. By the time you get to the third book's really good because they start expanding the story. But they're almost short, the first two, and very narrow focused. But the concepts are fantastic. Because what would happen if alien life crashed here?
Yeah, if it was really strange and it was starting to take over like every other form of life, like it just sort of merged in, and it also had time effects.
Round up. Go out there and just done, bro. Glyphosate. Kill that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it would have worked.
Changing space and time.
Yep, the farmers would take care of it real quick.
My plants are growing backwards. That shit would be dead quick. Anyway,
I'm trying to.
can't do it.
I'm trying to remember the guy who wrote the books, but I can't remember who it is. But anyway, yeah, the movie's fantastic.
There was a, I know we're now talking sci-fi, but there was a good series. Actually, Ben recommended it to me. It starts with a book called Pandora's Star. I don't remember what the whole series. It's a bunch of books. But one of the coolest concepts was that they actually, the author was sort of, one of my favorite things that some sci-fis do is they'll explain, not explicitly, but they'll sort of give you hints that they're explaining some mythological aspect of the human past using sci-fi elements. So they'll give you a reason, like, oh, you're reading and you're like, oh, this is why people thought this was happening, like in the past, right? So one of the things in this story was that there were like wormhole networks that were kind of natural that exist all through the galaxy, and that if you know what you're doing and you're sort of walking the right path on different planets, you can just walk through and end up on another planet without ever knowing really what's happening.
Nice.
So this explains all mysterious disappearances of people in the forest, because they only take place in deep forests away from like technological stuff. And there is an alien race in the galaxy that is very ancient, and their larval form is a humanoid that people called the elves, and they kind of have pointy ears and whatever, and they walk the paths. Their mature state is like some kind of supermind, right? Some kind of ascended supermind, and the supermind actually controls this galaxy-wide network of wormholes that traverses all these different worlds with garden areas, right?
Dang it. That's cool.
Yeah, and they do that for the purpose of their larval states being able to mature, because they're supposed to travel all these different worlds and have all these different crazy experiences so that they can become wise before they ascend to the mastermind state, the sort of overmind state. And so people in the books are having encounters with these things and also getting lost on the ways, right?
Right.
You go for a hike in the woods and then you're just on another planet.
That's great.
Because you walked around a tree and you look and you're like, well, what the hell is this place? One of the characters in the story, like he ends up he's walking the ways on purpose because he's trying to find, he's like, I'm trying to find, he wants to talk to the elvish overmind. He wants to ask them some questions. So he's walking the ways on purpose, and he finds this sort of refugee encampment where a whole bunch of people who have gotten lost but also don't want to keep walking. They're too afraid to continue walking the paths, so they've sort of made this encampment, and he stays there for a while, and he meets somebody, and this is like way in the future, 2400, something like that. And he's talking to this lady, and she's like, yeah, I went for a hike in Vermont in 1994 and I've been stuck here for 10 years.
That's the Commonwealth saga.
That's it. The Commonwealth. Yeah. Really good. And I love those kinds of concepts when a sci-fi just like brings this out and they're just like, look how this could be what's happening. This is the reason why people believed in elves, saw fairies and all this kind of stuff, because occasionally they would come to Earth. Yeah.
So,
That's cool.
what did you guys make of the Egyptian chambers and stuff that was supposedly discovered?
Oh yes, the Khafre stuff.
Yeah, we very skeptical at first.
Yeah, and at first I was like, no, dude.
Yeah.
No way.
But maybe there's something to the technology. As far as I can tell, looking into the actual technology, it is possible to get some data from subsurface, like some subsurface data. I don't know how detailed it is, and I think maybe even the heat map images that they showed are exactly the data that they collected from utilizing this technology.
Initially, I was very excited about it, and then as I looked at it and then looked at some of the commentary of people who knew this technology, like one guy was pointing out that they scanned the pyramid and yeah, they found chambers, but they didn't see the chambers that we already know are there.
Yep. This is also the case with Khafre. Like they're I think the chambers or the things that they're seeing are much larger than the actual internal chambers. I didn't see. I don't know. We actually invited the guys on the scientists on the show. So if that's still
did
happening,
they respond?
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah. So if it's still happening, I'm just haven't got confirmation on dates.
Yeah, there was some back and forth, but we haven't gotten a confirmation on exactly when. But they have agreed, like, yeah, well, we'd love to come on the show. We just don't know when they're going to do it yet. But yeah, we want to talk to him because the technology may be promising.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I think the technology is completely promising. I think they're just making very grandiose claims on what they've discovered that maybe the technology isn't quite able to back up.
Yeah.
As far as I understand it, there's a team also that, and they may not be the scientist guys. I don't know. We're going to find out. But what I've heard is that maybe the two scientists who are utilizing the technology are not actually the ones in charge of the press releases.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that could be a thing. I think maybe they've even backed away from some of the, because they're looking, they've got this like 3D rendering.
Yeah.
Utilizing like AI to analyze the heat map data.
Yeah.
Or the SAR data. And it's just, giant shafts with spiral staircases and all that. That was my initial reaction is none of this looks anything like anything that we see in Egypt.
Right.
Like that's not what you see. Like when you see giant shafts, they're square. They're not round. They don't have spiral staircases going around the outsides.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have long staircases and sometimes, but they're straight.
Yeah.
And they go all the way down to the bottom of the square shaft. From way over here, they come and go all the way down and they hit the bottom of the square shaft. They're not round shafts with spiral staircases. That's just what we see in Egypt over and over again, under pyramids too.
Yeah, which would imply that if that's the case, it might be someone else who built it.
There have been people that are saying that, well, you got to have a foundation. So, of course, they did all this work underneath it to, like, make some kind of foundation for the pyramid to sit on. I was like, no. Making giant holes under the pyramid is not a foundation. The foundation is the bedrock that it's already made of. It's a part of the pyramid is the bedrock.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't make sense. It would weaken the structure.
Yeah.
Having these huge shafts. So, I mean, maybe there are natural caves under there or natural fissures in the rock that are being picked up by the SAR data. Maybe there are huge shafts in there that were made by something completely different, and that's why they built a pyramid on top of it in the first place.
Right.
Because it was some special place. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we
weird.
know there's a cave system under the Giza Plateau.
Well, there's tunnels. Yeah. I don't know if it's natural caves.
Because Andrew Collins had the, what did he call it? Was it the Birds Cave or something like that?
Cave of the Birds.
Cave of the Birds, yeah, which is mostly a natural cave that they changed a little bit of. That's not that far, because I think he was saying that what they were seeing on those scans might connect into the caves he discovered.
I mean, that's just speculation, right? I mean,
totally.
We've had all these stories that like there's tons of tunnels underneath the Giza Plateau. So if there's these huge shafts underneath the entire pyramid, then maybe they connect. But I don't know. That's like separate from whether or not the SAR data is actually seeing voids.
Right.
The other problem is they're so deep they would be full of water and most likely sand. I mean, you go down in the Osiris shaft, it's only 150 feet deep. And it's water in the bottom.
Really?
Because that's the water table. That's the level of the water table. So these shafts would be full of water.
So Has the water table changed drastically over time?
It's
It's been slowly rising since they built the big dam.
Okay.
but it used to fluctuate. It used to fluctuate quite a bit. Like it would come up really high, and then it would go down really low due to the Nile flooding and then the
Right.
drought between, So now it's like more stable, but it's like slowly rising.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah. And it still goes up and down. Like sometimes we go and the Osiris shaft has less water in it. Sometimes we go and it's got a lot more, So it does fluctuate, but it's within a few feet as far as I know. But it used to fluctuate a lot. But in general, slowly over time, the water table overall has been very slowly rising since they built that dam. And this is a problem with multiples of the sites. They've been worried about how the effect it has on the Sphinx. Because, the Sphinx is way farther down in elevation than the pyramids.
Right.
The pyramids are up at the higher part of the plateau. The Sphinx is way down the causeway. It goes down very steeply for a long way. The Osiris shaft is about halfway-ish between. So you go up from the Sphinx, you get to the Osiris shaft, and then you have this, 150 feet down, there's water. And then you have to keep going up to the pyramids. But it's still, if it's, what were they saying, like 600 meters or something like that?
Yeah.
That's
We're talking like 200 feet down from the pyramid base, you're going to be in water.
Yeah.
And they're 600-meter deep shafts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
So how deep are the tunnels under the Giza Plateau? Don't those have the big boxes in them?
Well, the Osiris shaft has a box at the bottom.
Okay.
And
I think maybe there's tunnels going around. Like this may be
Yeah.
part of the tunnel system underneath. Like the Osiris shaft, maybe there's places to go. I don't know. But
it kind of looks like it when you're down there, but it's hard to tell.
we should ask Zahi.
Yeah.
He discovered it. But anyways, I would just say that if there are more tunnels and if the Osiris shaft goes even deeper, well, it's underwater and probably full of sediment.
Yeah.
Because there's sand blowing down in that shaft all the time. I mean, it's basically, over time, it's filling up. I'm sure they excavated to get down there.
Yeah.
And then they hit water. So then you got to pump it out, which they did for a while. They pumped it out and excavated down and looked at the box. But, you turn the pumps off, the water fills back up, the sand blows down in the hole all day and all night.
Right.
It just fills it up.
And there's other multiple places on the Giza Plateau where you can just stop. There's a big square, like modern, cobblestone wall with mortar, and they have a metal grate over the top, and you look in, and it's just a square shaft going way down, and it's
like
just
60, 70 feet
yeah,
down.
and it's
in
just
some
completely unexplained. It's no one knows if it's ever been fully excavated.
It'd be nice if they put a plaque,
Yeah.
hole.
Yeah.
This hole.
It was dug out in 1908, whatever. Yeah.
It is no plaque. Nothing.
Yeah.
Somebody just tag it, please. I don't know what it's called. Random hole in the Giza Plateau.
Square hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another square hole.
Yeah.
Every hole in
What
the
do you-
Giza Plateau is square.
What do you guys know, speaking of square holes, what do you guys know about the hole in the back of the Sphinx on the top?
I haven't been on the top, but there is a hole on the backside.
Yeah,
I
on the
thought
butt.
The old butthole.
Isn't there one on top, though, too?
There is one on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We
And
haven't
do
been
you
able to
have-
get up there.
Right, but have you ever heard about what's in it? I mean, I've seen pictures of people going into it, but I've never seen what they discovered in there, if anything.
No,
Is it on the top of the head?
it's like, yeah. Isn't it? Like,
Is it on
right
top
up
of
there?
the head?
I'd be curious if it was originally for a crown.
Yeah, Yusuf was saying that it was for the installation of a head jet.
Because there's a lot of Egyptian statues, stone statues, that have a hole in the top of the head that's like a key for when they take a stone carving of the crown, and it would have the positive end of the key, and they'd put it in there, and it's also square, so it can't
Right.
spin around, but it's a square hole, folks. The only round holes we're talking about are the ones that are for the doorways or whatever. We don't know what they're all for, but the drill holes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know anything about the hole in the top of the head other than think Zahi talked about it on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he said. There's nothing in there. Or whatever.
Well, there's nothing in there if it contradicts the official story.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
There is this hole on the backside at the ground level, and it goes down, and there's a ladder, and then it's just full of rubble.
Okay,
Like, it's just filled
that
with
must be
sand and
just
dirt and stuff. Like it has a ladder going down into the dirt.
Yeah.
So they had excavated it out and
Climb down in
climbed
there.
down in there for something, and it was enough
then
to like have a ladder installed.
Yeah. And then they never pulled the ladder out, and now
Yeah.
it's buried in rubble with
Water bottles, plastic
classic
bags.
Egypt. Yeah. Yeah.
And what would you even make a hole like that for?
Well, to
Storage?
hide something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so.
A lot of it, a lot
it
of
could be a robber, like
yeah,
there's a robber.
a lot of that stuff is usually, and I can't say this for sure about this particular hole in the Sphinx, but people dig into this stuff expecting to find something.
Right.
So it may not even be original to the Sphinx itself. But of course, if this was done in ancient times, I mean, the thing was full of sand.
I think that it was done after the restoration efforts because
Okay.
yeah, because the hole is on the outside of the casing stones. The Sphinx has been cased over.
Yeah.
and the hole is
Is
to the outside of those casing stones. If it was original, it'd be up against the body,
yeah,
which would have been underneath casing stones.
underneath all the new casing stones. Yeah.
So
That
I think it
makes
was after some point, some restoration in dynastic times. Somebody freaking dug a hole in the Sphinx's butt.
Yeah. There's also weird unexplained boxes to either side of it that are masoned in. Like they have masonry.
Yeah,
around them.
that's
These big
weird, too.
square, and like it's not really clear what they're for or what they're hiding. You know.
Yeah, that's weird. Should run.
I mean, this is-
you could GPR scan that whole Sphinx. You
Yeah.
could just drive a little GPR unit against the side, and
Yeah.
I don't
That
know.
would be interesting.
Apparently, Zahi has done this, and there's nothing.
Isn't there some? I mean, I think Robert Schuck said that there is a chamber under the Sphinx somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think. Yes, I'm joking a little bit. I mean, but Zahi was saying there's nothing. But yes, there. I don't know the story exactly, but apparently they did some GPR, and there seems to be some squarish
Yeah.
voids underneath there, according to GPR data,
Small
which is pretty
and close to the surface.
which is pretty
Yeah.
accurate. And a
Well,
known technology.
I remember Schock talking about how he saw the evidence of the chamber under whatever leg it was of the Sphinx, but knew nothing about Edward Casey predicting it until someone from the Edward Casey Foundation got a hold of him, and he was like, "Who the hell's Edward Casey?" You know.
Yeah.
Apparently, was where Edward Casey said it was going to be.
Yeah, under
That's
the left
really
paw.
interesting.
Yeah. Under the left paw is where it's supposed to be.
Why would be the left paw?
I don't know.
Where's the precedent for that? And I'm wondering. That's weird.
Yeah. Like,
I don't know.
I was trying
to
to hopefully I was just going to be like ding, and there was going to be a connection, but there's not.
The Sphinx is left-handed. He's a southpaw.
He's a southpaw, bro.
so what was your last trip that you made? Was it
we
Egypt?
we went to Egypt, and then we went to Turkey after that. So
Oh.
it was all one trip. We did a tour in Egypt, the traditional tour we do every year with Ben from UnchartedX, and then we had an extension that was more focused this time on diving, because there's this secret evil plan to get a bunch of people dive certified who are really interested in like diving on cool stuff, and then doing a trip diving on cool stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people came to that. It was a lot of fun, really cool. And then we went out into the desert for a little while. Then we went to Alexandria, went to some museums, went and saw the pillar. What was it called?
Oh,
That giant freaking
Huge
single
pillar, yeah.
piece pillar, like incredibly huge. I don't
Yeah.
know what it was called. Delphi?
no,
That's the wrong one.
that's the wrong
That's
pillar.
an iron
That's the
pillar.
pillar that's made of iron that hasn't rusted. Yeah,
It sounded close to that though.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But then we dove on the Pharos
yes, that's right.
off of Alexandria, the big collapsed lighthouse.
Oh, nice. So what
Yeah,
did you
the
take
visit-
away? What did you take away from that visit versus previous visits? Like, was there anything new that you were really astonished by? I mean, aside from the fact that you were looking at the lighthouse.
Yeah, that well,
Can I say something about this lighthouse dive?
yeah, yeah.
Bro. Diving on this lighthouse was like walking through a graveyard in the mist and you can't speak.
Yeah.
You're
That's
down
exactly
there
right.
underwater and it was so murky and like if me and Russ were the dive buddies. So if he was 10 feet away from me, he just like
You just
just
disappear.
disappears into the murkiness. But when you're going down, like you couldn't see the bottom. You couldn't see the surface. As soon as you went under, you're like, where am I? So you're looking at your watch and you're just like, okay, I'm going down. I can't see anything. I was kind of freaking out. And it's not very deep, but then we get down there and just like out of the mist, just these giant blocks and columns laying all over the place. And you're just swimming through this. Oh, it was so haunting, dude.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
creepy
It was
AF. Sorry for you. Where did the road go, listeners? Soray's gonna have to edit me on this.
yeah.
show,
He won't be putting this one on the radio, bro.
I've already marked your swearing.
Thank you. I saw you pick up the phone after I dropped it.
You didn't swear
Anyways.
now, though. You were good.
Okay.
You said
Anyways,
creep-
it was super creepy, and it was man, that was the most haunting experience I think I've ever had.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It was very eerie to swim through that murky water and have those everywhere. Massive blocks. Everywhere we swam, they were just everywhere. And the gigantic pieces of columns. Pompeii's pillar. That's what it was. Yeah. So it was,
Oh, okay.
and we dove on it twice. So we spent maybe an hour and a half total swimming because it was 2 45-minute dives ish, and it was man, it blocks everywhere. If those were all or at least mostly part of some kind of megalithic massive lighthouse, it would have been an enormous, amazing structure.
Beautiful structure.
Yeah.
So many round columns too. I mean
Yeah.
Well,
It
that's
would've
what.
Fluted.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't that what it was supposed to be? A lighthouse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was supposed to be like one of the wonders of the ancient world, right? It's just collapsed.
What subsidence? Earth subsidence, right? Like an earthquake or something.
Yeah, some kind of massive earthquake and part of the yeah. I mean there's a huge underwater archaeological site off the coast there. We tried to get permission to dive on that, but it's not yet. We weren't able to get it this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it active?
Yeah, supposedly they're still doing work there. That's why they don't let randos dive on the site. So
Kind of hard to sneak in.
yeah,
When
it's
there's
tough
we
to-
have to have a boat. You know?
yeah,
You can't really do that.
yeah. Like, what was the tank on? Nothing. I'm just looking around.
Just out for a swim.
So was there anything you got out of this Egyptian trip other than that you hadn't experienced before or hadn't thought of before?
There was a lot actually, and to be honest, the combination of the Egypt and Turkey was really great. We had Yusuf with us the whole time, so it was really interesting to see his take on the stuff in Turkey as well, and the connections between that and Egypt, which I think Russ can talk about a little bit more with the
Sabians.
the Sabians. That was really cool.
Oh yeah. So there's a site in Turkey called Haran that we visit. That's it's not super ancient, but it is from the classical world, basically. It's a city that was supposed to have been sort of surrounded by a moat. It was famous for having schools, a university, and the Sabians were from there. And the Sabians are kind of mysterious. They're like, they're sometimes referred to as a Quranic mystery. Like they're mentioned in the Quran as a people of the book, right? So like they are so like the Islamic people, the Christians, and the Jews are considered people of the book. They sort of have the same texts, right? They're people of the book. And they also mention Sabians as being people of the book, but no one knows who they really were. But they supposedly lived in Haran, and they were astronomers, scholars, fascinated with the sky. And there's also a site nearby called Sogmatar that we visited. And Sogmatar is interesting because it has a big central mound that may have been, it's sometimes referred to as a pyramid, but it's just a huge mound. It's obviously man-made, and it's like mountainous. Whatever it is it was enormous. It may be a kind of a tell of the sort where it's like somebody built something and that collapsed, and then somebody built something on top of that and it collapsed, and now you have multiple times and you have this big mound now. Or it may be a single structure. Whatever it was very large, like a castle or some kind of fort, but whatever, like fortification, because it's also in a river comes along there and sort of splits around the place where the mound is. So the water would have been going around it like a natural moat, and they built this massive structure on it. And it's supposed to have secrets buried underneath it. It's kind of a similar thing. And there's also these interesting temples that are situated in the landscape around it. And the landscape out there is incredibly barren, at least now. It may have been more fertile in the past, but
A long time ago.
Now it's almost all 100% bare rock.
Wow.
On the hilltops.
On the hillsides and hilltops, it's just exposed rock, and there's like little tufts of grass sometimes, but it's mostly only down in the very bottoms of the valleys and the riverbeds. Previous riverbeds, there's no water now. Do you have any green plants at all? But situated on multiple hillsides, this rocky landscape around this central mound, which is in one of the only low-lying areas where there's green stuff, are these circular satellite temples or structures that are also all collapsed now. All of them have a subterranean chamber, at least
cut
one.
right into the rock.
Just cut right into the rock, and then they built this beautiful round masonry, not quite megalithic, but large blocks, large dry-laid stone blocks in a circle, and they're supposed to be planetary or astronomical temples. So there's like one for the sun, there's one for the moon, and one for the planets that were known to the ancient people. And it's supposed to have been a site for the worship of the Assyrian god Sin, which is a moon god. Right, and Sin as a moon god is associated with Hermes and Thoth, the Egyptian god of the moon or god of knowledge. Right, so Hermes Trismegistus, Thoth, and Sin are probably all sort of different names for the same phenomenon or character or whatever, however you want to refer to it. This moon god and god of knowledge. So Sabians were worshippers of the god of knowledge. They were followers of Hermes, basically.
Okay.
And so one theory about the Sabians is that their book was the Hermetica. Right? The book of Hermes, the book of Hermes' knowledge. And they used to, Yusuf tells this story about how the Sabians used to travel to Giza to visit the Sphinx for some reason. They would travel to Egypt and basically make a kind of pilgrimage to the Sphinx itself, and they would also go to Sogmatar, and there's also Nimrut. I'm not sure. I would love to find out if they ever visited that place, but the point is that there seems to be hints that as followers of Hermes that they were actually revering sites associated with Hermes or the god of knowledge. In other words, places that may have been vaults of Hermes. places where ancients stored hidden knowledge.
Where did he get that story from? Do you know?
The traveling of the Sabians, it's like, as far as I know, he says it was written about by multiple people, and it's like a
Oh, okay.
known thing
But
that they traveled there.
I mean, you can just look it up, and there's some information about them, and they are mentioned in the Quran, and
Yeah.
they are considered a people of the book, and
Yeah.
all that.
Mm.
I don't know if they traveled. I don't know if you can find that it's mentioned they traveled to the Sphinx or anything like that, but
Yeah,
perhaps.
yeah,
But that was really cool.
yeah.
Well, again, with shock, I mean, that was the biggest argument against his dating of the Sphinx, is that there were no other contemporary cultures that, and then now we have Gobekli Tepe.
Okay, this is one. Yeah, this is one definitely mind explosion we had, and Kyle can tell you about.
Okay.
I've been doing more research on this, and it's so sparse. Like, it's just, there's not much on it. But one of the really interesting things to me is that at the bottom layers of Gobekli Tepe, the archaeologists initially dated the site at roughly 12,000 years ago
Right.
by the arrowheads that were found at the bottom, the lithics.
Mm-hmm.
And among these lithics, there's like 3 or 4 different types, main types, and one of them is Helwan point. It's a projectile point made out of flint, arrowhead. Well, Helwan is in Egypt. It's in Cairo.
Mm.
And so they were named after this place in Helwan, where many of them were found. They've also been found in the Fayum Desert. There's been multiple places where they were found and identified in Egypt, but it just kind of blew my mind, like right off the bat. Like, this is what they found at the bottom of Gobekli Tepe. And then when you look at the map and you see this, the Fertile Crescent, it's like this curve like this, and all these Neolithic sites that are the same people that supposedly are responsible for the building of Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, and now what they're calling the entire Taj Tepe civilization. It's all these people. But that crescent that comes down to the west is right there at the Sinai Peninsula, or close to it, right across I guess it's the Dead Sea. There's 2 splits. I can't remember what they are, but anyway, it's not a far stretch to get to at least like Dahab, where we were out in the desert. And they could have migrated there, or they could have had pilgrimages there. They could actually be connected to the Neolithic cultures in Egypt at that time. Now, the dating there's just not really much evidence. There hasn't really been a whole lot of study about this particular lithic type. I've just been digging all over the place trying to find papers of like, where are these arrowheads found, and are they PPNA? But
That's why we need to talk to Mark said the guy who was responsible for naming a lot of these points might have more information on it.
Yeah, I mean, they were first identified a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but that was a really interesting connection, because we've heard all this stuff about the primordial mounds. There was some primordial mound. This is kind of like I don't know if it's a mysticism or like this. Does this come from archaeology, or does this come from the legends or the myths around the Egyptian civilization? But this idea that there was a primordial mound, and that was the impetus for building these giant monuments, the pyramids, in the places that they were. And I think that if you consider a primordial mound being some natural geological feature that made it interesting, that made it sacred perhaps to Neolithic people, there's no doubt that there's Neolithic artifacts all around Giza. They've found, so these people are living at the same time as the people at Gobekli Tepe. Well, you remember the argument back when Graham was suggesting that there was like this, post-apocalypse civilization that maybe had lost everything, and then they join hunter-gatherers and they do something great, like they pass their knowledge on to the hunter-gatherers, and they take they share the hunter-gatherers share their knowledge of how to survive with, almost nothing. So they keep these people alive, and also the people pass on some kind of knowledge to them, maybe some of their architectural knowledge or planning or engineering or surveying or astronomy or whatever. So the idea that at the time, before Gobekli Tepe was really discovered, was that, well, there's no evidence whatsoever of anybody capable of building anything megalithic at that time. Well, then they find Gobekli Tepe, and it is dated to that time. But it doesn't look like we're dealing with, I mean, Klaus Schmidt was basically saying, like, these people are hunter-gatherers. And when you look at the tools at the bottom of Gobekli Tepe, they're, like, extremely crude. These, like, simple chipped flint tools was all they did, and they weren't even, I mean, we in the Americas, we have much finer tools from that same age that are just incredible works of art. But over there, they're just, I don't mean to diminish them at all, because I also love these tools, but they are not anything close in terms of, like, style and ability to work with stone.
Yeah, even in, like, archaeological stylistic descriptions, they would say these are primitive stone tools.
Right.
The ones that like Clovis tools that are found in the Americas are incredibly advanced, beautiful, heavily worked stone tools, and like the ones that are found that are associated with the bottom layers of Gobekli Tepe are not advanced, right? They're just very crude.
And it seems like,
so yeah, the point is to just finish the point that Graham, I think, was vindicated when they found Gobekli Tepe, because there was somebody who was capable of cutting massive chunks of bedrock. Because when we're looking at Gobekli Tepe, you're not just talking about T-pillars.
right?
They cut huge amounts of bedrock out and flattened it and did all this bedrock work that is not really talked about a whole lot in the public domain. But the amount of bedrock cutting and flattening of these hillsides in limestone that they did is incredible. And so then the fact that there's an arrowhead from those bottom layers that's associated with Giza or Cairo kind of says, well, could the Sphinx actually have been made at that time as well? It's just a giant limestone bedrock carving.
Yeah.
That the people who built Gobekli Tepe were perfectly capable of making. They were perfectly capable of making something like the Sphinx at that time.
Yeah, so there's two arguments being made here. One is that Gobekli Tepe was made in the ancient times, and in the time period that Schock and Graham and others, John Anthony West, have suggested in the deep past, right, was that the Sphinx was made.
Right.
So now you do have, like, this answers Mark Lehner's question of, like, show me the potsherd. Where's the civilization?
It's a pre-pottery Neolithic.
Right. Show me the potsherds. Well, there's no potsherds. It's pre-pottery. And now there's the second argument that's being made here that's interesting. So on the one hand, now we do have people who obviously were capable of making stuff in that time period in the deep past. The second part of this is that the mainstream archaeology is now associating pre-pottery, crude tool-making Neolithic people with making Gobekli Tepe. Megalithic art. So asking for the potsherds is ridiculous at this point, because they are saying that pre-pottery people made Gobekli Tepe, and those people would have been perfectly capable of making the Sphinx.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure that I agree that those pre-pottery Neolithic people made Gobekli Tepe, and they probably didn't make the Sphinx either. In other words, I think somebody more advanced made these sites.
Or perhaps joined them, as Graham suggested, after a cataclysm, and passed on some knowledge to them.
Yes.
Or at least utilized some of their knowledge, so maybe their artisans
and manpower. Yeah.
And utilize their manpower to help do this.
Exactly.
Because the other argument, I would say, this is getting into the minutia here, but I love this. The other argument...
Seriah is trying to ask questions too, or not?
Actually, I'm trying to say we should take a break.
Oh, yeah. Well,
let me finish the one point. The other argument I would make about Gobekli Tepe is that apparently the T-pillars were made in the earliest time. Like Gobekli Tepe was inhabited roughly for 1,200 to 2,000 years. It was utilized before it was abandoned. In that time frame, it looks like the big, massive megalithic T-pillars that have ornate carvings and the sculptures and all that were like the first iteration. And then for 1,000 years after that, the site was used, but the T-pillars weren't remade. They kept falling down, and then they were stood back up and moved to a different spot, and a wall was built to hold them in place. And that took place for like 1,000 to 1,200 years. So did they suddenly lose the ability to carve these giant megalithic T-pillars? Or were they just occupying the site and trying to maintain it in this... on this hillside that is incredibly erosional, and you know, they get heavy rains, they get earthquakes, they get all these problems, and so the site gets dilapidated. Then they move a bunch of T-pillars and stand them up and build walls to hold them, and then they fall over again. And then you can see it's clear that they are not making new ones. They're just taking the broken top of one and standing it up and putting stones underneath it to hold it at the rough level of the other ones.
Wow.
So it seems apparent, and I think even the archaeologists are admitting, oh yeah, there was like a lot of like renovation and reuse. And kind of one of the things that they say that I think is a little bit ridiculous is that the buildings were never finished.
Yeah.
They're like, they were working on these buildings for 1,000 years and they never finished them. And my point is like, no. They were just occupying the site and trying to maintain the buildings and couldn't rebuild. They were incapable of rebuilding. So
well, let's continue.
And then the other point you made, and real quick, is that what's the other interesting thing about the Gobekli Tepe site and Karahan and everything else is that the most advanced T-pillar stuff is at the very beginning, the earliest layers.
Yeah.
And the most primitive stone tools are at the earliest layers. As time goes by, the tools get more sophisticated.
The arrowheads get more sophisticated.
And the T-pillar sophistication goes down.
Yes.
So the megalithic stuff gets less sophisticated, but the stone tools get more sophisticated, which also is an argument in favor of occupation by a more primitive people who didn't build the original site. Yeah. Breakdown?
All right.
Breakdown.
All right. You guys need to take
this recording.
Yeah.
Now we're back. Welcome back, folks.
And what were you just saying off air that you should have been saying on air?
Yeah, so Russ was asking me about what is the deal with this sparse connection of the Helwan point with, you know, in Egypt and versus at Gobekli Tepe. And the problem is that there's just not very many of them found in Egypt. I don't know why they were named Helwan points, but there's only been like not very many found in Helwan. There were even more found in the Fayum oasis, but even there, it's not very many. Compared to like in the Fertile Crescent, where the PPNA, the pre-pottery Neolithic A, were very prevalent, and there's just thousands and thousands of this style of point. And in the papers of these archaeologists discussing these lithics in Egypt, there's a little bit of speculation about like what is even the purpose of the different styles, because the styles are so like there's some ideas about like, well, maybe there's utilitarian style, or there's a utilitarian purpose for this difference in style of a projectile point. Like one guy suggested maybe the notches on the sides of this Helwan point are so it breaks, or is that the Byblos? I can't remember. But maybe they want it to break off in the prey or something like that. So that would be like a utilitarian purpose. But they also speculate that some of these differences are so, they just don't seem to have a purpose, that they might actually be stylistic and represent more of like a group. So there's just a tribe or a group of people, and this is how they make arrowheads, and that's what identifies them, and they identify with this style that they make. And that style of arrowhead might impress some people somewhere else, and maybe they adopt it for a little while, but then it sort of goes out of vogue.
Yeah, it goes out of style.
goes
Right.
out of style, and they just stop making it, and they make a different type. So no matter the case, like the fact that they are specifically Hell-1 points suggests that there was some migration from the
Yeah.
Fertile Crescent down into Egypt. Maybe it was more like a pilgrimage, right? Like, because there's just not thousands of these points have been found, and there's been a lot of archaeology in Egypt. So
Yeah.
you can imagine that maybe some of this pre-pottery Neolithic A might have been making a pilgrimage to the Sphinx, for example.
Right.
Because if you try to say that these are the people responsible for building the Sphinx, there should just be thousands of them around that area. There should be the Sphinx. This is one of the things I thought, like in the old stories. I can't remember the guy's name, the pharaoh who slept under the head of the Sphinx and had the dream. He's on the dream. Tutmosis the second or third or whatever. He has the dream, and the Sphinx tells him, like, if you dig me out of the sand, I'll make you pharaoh.
Free me from my prison of sand. Yeah.
I had this thought that was like, oh my God, wouldn't it be amazing if the dynastics dug out a gigantic midden pile because the Sphinx was actually just buried in midden? Because that's what Gobekli Tepe is. Gobekli Tepe is buried in human occupation layers. It's all midden. So I couldn't find anything on that. Of course, that was dug up thousands of years ago by the Egyptians.
Yeah, where are the archaeological papers on that?
Yeah, there aren't any archaeological papers. So the Egyptians might have dug out all of this midden, or maybe it was just sand. But if it was built by the people who were responsible for these Hell-1 points, there should have been thousands of them there, because it would have taken a lot of people a long time to carve that Sphinx. Just like we find thousands of them at the bottom of Gobekli Tepe or Karahan Tepe and all these megalithic sites in Turkey. So it seems more likely that it was, like the archaeologists say, maybe it was just kind of introduced in the area, and the arrowhead type was sort of picked up and stylistically copied by somebody for a while, or that these people who made them were actually making pilgrimages or explorations down into the Nile Valley.
God, can you imagine? So you have the idea that some survivors of an advanced civilization join these people in the Taj Tepeler area, and they're like, we can show you how to build megaliths and stuff. And then later they're like, one of them's getting old. He's like, I want to take you guys to see something.
Oh man.
And so as his dying wish, he gets these guys to take him all the way down and down there to the Sphinx, and they see it. Like these giant triangles and things, and the Sphinx coming out of the sand, the remnants of this other civilization. He's like, yes, this is what we once were.
Yeah.
And you can become again.
I think they would have been probably the what are we calling them? The superstructures of the pyramids.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It wouldn't have been the triangle.
The superstructures would have been there, more like a step pyramid or a ziggurat type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rough on the exterior.
Yeah.
And the Sphinx.
Yeah. And they were like, these are the vaults of my people.
Yeah. Maybe that's where they took them first.
Yeah.
And then they went back to Turkey and started building Gobekli Tepe.
Yeah. He's like, I need to
And
get
it's all this cat symbolism.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just
Like,
crazy.
I left a book down there. I need to get it.
Yeah, the guy's like, trust me, there's a butthole in the Sphinx. I need to get my book from down there.
Wow, there's a couple of things, a couple of directions I want to go from there. If I remember right, the stones at Gobekli Tepe are very ornately and delicately carved, which suggests that it wouldn't have been with rudimentary tools that they did this.
The claim is that they did this with flint tools.
Yeah.
Now, this is the other thing I've been looking for in the published papers. Where are the flint tools that they carved the limestone with? Because there should be thousands of those dull and broken all over the site.
Right.
The thousands of tools that are found on the site are projectile points,
Yeah.
not carving tools.
Yeah,
now,
they're
they
not-
say, like, oh, there's these scythe-like tools that they use to reap crops and this and that. And it's like, okay, I saw a couple of scythe-like tools in the museum. But where were the stone carving.
Yeah,
flints.
where were the flint chisels?
So I could be wrong about this because, of course, I haven't read every single paper, but
Right.
I've been to the site and I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of these lithics laying around because they're everywhere. And they are so fragile and tiny and thin. You are not carving limestone with that shit.
No.
That stuff. So I just... Boop. What's wrong with me? Anyways,
Sweary bros are back.
yeah, that's really weird. I don't think that, I don't know. I mean, it's possible to carve limestone with flint because flint's much harder. But I would imagine that if you were doing this for 1,000 years, that you would get better and better stone carving tools, and there would be literally thousands of them broken and dull laying all over the site.
Because again, it's not just carving the pillars and carving the reliefs in the pillars, but also the entire bedrock work. Like that takes a
Right.
lot. You know, the bedrock work is going to be a major undertaking. You know, it's aside from the delicate carving of the sculptures and stuff, you have to remove a lot of material to flatten the bedrock and leave the pedestals, and then on the pedestals are these, you know, raised relief of the birds. In some cases, it's like it's very detailed work.
And where we
And if
see
we're-
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that if we're dating it based on those flint tools we're finding at the lowest level, the dating might be completely wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the other dating method that I think that they're working off of mostly now, like initially the dating was just purely on the like, you imagine the archaeologists did a sounding all the way down to bedrock, and they pull out all these flint artifacts from the bottom, and they're like, these are 12,000 years old, because they have 100 sites around the Fertile Crescent that they've already got those arrowheads next to something that has been carbon dated over and over and over, showing those dates. So they were
Right.
very confident with the
they have well-established dates for the PP&A objects.
so they were very confident in those dates just based on the lithics. But then they've done all of this work to try doing carbon dates to directly date the site, and they've had all these difficulties. But the most promising one, and the one that they've gone off of now, is from organic materials in the mortar itself.
Oh, okay.
And the mortar is not on the megaliths; it's in the cobblestone rock walls that that make the circular enclosures, right? And the rock walls are actually holding the pillars up. So they go to the bottom of the rock wall and they get some mortar out and they find some seeds or whatever in there, and they can date those. They can carbon date those, and they align with the, say this one is like 10,000 years old. But there's another rock wall behind that. And so they date the bottom of that rock wall. And they're like, well, that one's 11,000 years old. Then they date the rock wall behind that, and they're like, that one's 11,600. So they know that the outermost rock wall, which also has some giant T-pillars still left in it, a few, that rock wall is the oldest. And then there's another rock wall built on the inside, and then there's broken T-pillars, and a few T-pillars have been slid forward and put in place there. And then there's another rock wall built in front of that with more broken T-pillars. So it looks like it started out as this big circle with all the pillars on the outside and then your two central pillars. And then as it collapsed, they kept standing up pillars and dragging them in and building new rock walls to hold them up, because the midden from around was just falling into the enclosure. They're very deep. But the midden had to accumulate. So as the people live there for hundreds of years, this giant midden accumulates all around this enclosure that they're having ceremonies in, and then they have a rainstorm and this midden sort of slides into the interior. Then they have to dig it out, and T-pillars had fallen over. They stand it up.
They weren't good at waste management.
I mean, it's a difficult site to manage. I mean, even now, like they're still like we went there after the floods in 2023.
I mean, the ancient people.
I know.
Yeah. You're on a hilltop. Waste management is throw the waste off the side of the hill. No, we build a we just build a gigantic mound and live on top of it. You know, I mean, I'm being facetious, but it's like this in every. I mean, you know, we've dug in like we went on a cave dig in South Texas, and it was like this 30, 40 feet of material that built up under this shelter because they're living there and they're building fires there, they're eating there or whatever, and all this material just builds up and they just are living on top of it until it's approaching the roof of the shelter.
But they're literally living there for 10,000 years.
Yeah.
It's not just
but these guys
did
this in 1,000 years.
Yeah, the people at Gobekli Tepe were at least utilizing the main enclosures that you see all the pictures of for around 2,000 years.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing. Think about that. I mean, where were we 2,000 years ago
Yeah.
Exactly.
versus where we are now?
Yeah.
It's incredible that they were utilizing this special building that they're calling it. They're trying to steer away from the temple discussion, but
Good.
yeah, it was called a temple at first, and anyway, they call them special buildings. So they've got this stone circle. Perhaps it had a roof, or maybe they put a roof on it. I don't know. But they're trying to use it, and they use it for 1,000 years. That's like we have cathedrals that have been in use for like 300 or 600 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, that's incredible. They obviously venerated it,
Right.
and
Right.
I think it's pretty reasonable to suggest that they weren't the builder. I mean, it's undeniable that the people 1,000 years later who were still using it were not the builders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the archaeologists talk about it like they were still building it.
Yeah.
Like they never finished. You know, I'm just like, no, I don't think so, bro.
But don't.
That's the
wasn't it
longest building
also-
contract known to man. Like, bro, this is way over budget.
Wasn't it also that there's other locations around the same area that were also buried? Like they built them, buried them, built a new location, buried it. That was the story initially, and that they've only uncovered like 30% of this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the argument that they were buried came from the fact that when, let's just say on a normal midden site, the archaeologists would go down centimeter by centimeter, taking samples and checking all of the stratigraphy of the dirt. And they would basically determine from all of their various scientific methods of testing the dirt, or maybe looking at the different lithics that are there, they would get a timeline. And the timeline would get older and older and older as they went down.
Right.
Inside the enclosures in Gobekli Tepe, they would like get some of the oldest layers at the top and then younger layers at the bottom, and then back to old, really, really old layers. And it was just all mixed up. So that's really where they were just like, this has been bare, like this, all this material was thrown in here. So then they took midden material from over there that probably had the natural stratigraphy of like newest stuff at the top and oldest stuff at the bottom. They dug that out and threw it in the pit that was the enclosure. So you end up with young layers at the bottom and old layers at the top. Not perfect, but it's all mixed up, essentially. Only inside the enclosures. So that was where the idea that they buried them came from. That's been changing a little bit. There's a debate going on between archaeologists at the site. Like the guy at Karoly Tepe, the lead archaeologist over there, is like, these were definitely buried on purpose. And his main reasoning, I haven't read those papers, but one of his main reasonings is that they actually flagstoned, and then they would bury and then put more flagstones and bury. I think there's another possibility that they just flagstoned after a big flood that caused the midden to slide in from natural.
Rather than dig it all out, they'd put flagstones
They just
down.
flagstone the floor, make a terrazzo floor. They use some mortar, flatten it out rather than excavate it down.
And then 100 years later, it collapses again.
Yeah. So I think most likely it was not intentionally buried. The burial was due to erosion and slope sliding, not landslides. We're not talking about entire masses of material moving in and knocking over all the pillars. But sedimentation, which would just be like the fines during a rain are just flowing down inside the enclosures. Right. Occasionally you would get a slope slide, so you have a steep bank and it just sort of collapses into the enclosure and has like a spill.
Yeah, some of the
because they're finding lenses, like these lenses. So there will be one, there's like a lens like this, and then there's a lens on top of that from a different side. And they can see that demarcation from two different events where stuff fell in and then stuff fell in 600 years later. There's evidence that it took, there's evidence that the burial of the pillars took at least 1,000 years, for example, in some cases.
Okay.
So it's not any one person saying, "Hey guys, let's bury this," and then 1,000 years later, the last guy's like, "Whew, all right, done." No.
Took a long time to build. Took even longer to bury.
No, I don't think they were. Well, they were intentionally buried.
When we were talking about the other earlier, and I said we may not be able to, conceive of what this thing is, and we may not be able to see it for what it is. We're looking here at people. And we have no idea why they would have done this, how they did it, and why they maintained it for so long.
That's a really good point.
These are people like us.
People.
Yeah.
So when you get to an intelligence that's not like us, like where do you meet?
That's a really good point.
That is a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's
you have to meet at more fundamental things.
If you were to imagine. I think that there's a pretty good explanation, but still, that's just about the idea of these people that were occupying the site for 1,000 years. The symbolism on the stones, the purpose of the original megaliths in these circular patterns and all of that is completely unknown. I mean, it's like, who decides to do this and why? Like, hey, let's just cut the bedrock out of let's go to this tallest mountain in the area that's far away from water and cut bedrock flat and then stand up a bunch of giant pillars and carve all this stuff all over it. That's the real mystery. Why? Mm-hmm. What does it mean? What was the purpose of it?
Well, even Egypt, we look at so much of that stuff and it's like, why did they do this? I mean, the Egyptologists will when we say, why did they build the pyramid? There's tons of theories. The Egyptologists are like, well, they're tombs.
Yeah.
Yet most it was a national... What was it?
A national project?
Yeah, it was a national project. Seriah. Okay.
Again, I think we're forcing our thinking onto people who think in a completely alien way to us.
Yeah.
Their motivations for doing this stuff were probably completely different.
Well, I really love the concept of the circles being at Gobekli Tepe being associated with different animals, right? And like maybe these are different groups. Like if it was some kind of school, or like Gobekli Tepe especially is supposed to be associated mostly with like it has male imagery.
Okay.
There's almost no female imagery at Gobekli Tepe. Karahan has a lot of female imagery, carvings and little statuettes and things, but Gobekli Tepe, almost all the stuff that they've found, at least according to what I've read so far, is almost exclusively male carvings and depictions and things like that. So you imagine some kind of like coming of age ceremony. Now, I'm not suggesting that this necessarily means that these people built it, but there's like this idea that you have the school of the wolf and of the cat and of the boar and the bird, and each circle is associated with a different animal. I really think this is a cool idea.
Slytherins.
Yeah, the snake. Yeah, the snake is one of the circles too. Yeah.
And there's a bunch of stuff that's still buried, right?
Oh yeah, I mean the site is huge. As from what I can tell, now this isn't. I'm not completely sure about this, but from what I can tell from their soundings, what they've dug up is what they thought were the most prominent circular formations.
Yeah,
and that the stuff around it would be peripheral things. Now, probably full of very pertinent information, but they seem to have dug up the central stuff, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Now that may not be true.
There are other major enclosures at Gobekli Tepe that they found with GPR,
yeah.
but they're probably not going to dig all those up. They might dig another one up, but they're not going to dig all of them up.
Why not?
Some common practice in archaeology to like you dig some, you dig a whole bunch, but then you leave a whole bunch of the rest of it for the future, research. Because in the history of archaeology, what we found is that when past archaeologists completely excavated a site, they didn't have a certain understanding or dating abilities or even contextual understanding of what they might have been throwing away.
Right.
And so by completely excavating a site and only collecting a limited amount of data based on what they were capable of at the time, we have been completely deprived of any in situ layers to go through with our modern technology to see like, well, what can we add to the story now with our modern technology? So it's become...
So some sites get basically frozen in time at the time of the archaeology was done.
Yeah.
Right.
And like no new... Some new insights, but no new insights based on like in situ stuff can be made anymore because the site was completely excavated.
And that's been, it's been bad. Like essentially, like you go to a modern site and you're like, damn, if we could dig some of this now, we would know so much more about what was really going on. So it's become a modern practice, and it's taught. This is just what they do. They will dig a specific area and go all the way down, and they might dig a little bit more, and then once they get like a general idea of what's going on, then they'll be very, very limited or choosy about what they excavate further because they're trying to leave that for the future.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of, it's sort of a known unknown. There's a whole bunch of data in there that exists, but you may not be able to extract. So you leave it for future people who could extract it. Like sort of an abstract concept. Yeah.
I mean,
but the thing is that they've realized now that Gobekli Tepe obviously is not alone. There's Karahan Tepe that will not be fully excavated, and we're talking about enormous site like Gobekli Tepe.
Massive.
Gobekli Tepe is like it's 300 meters in diameter. This giant freaking midden pile. It's a tell essentially. It's a city underground, right? It's like just a whole bunch of different buildings on top of older buildings, and then covered in midden. And it's this huge site. They're never going to dig all of it because some of it is just, it doesn't have any architectural elements. It's just midden. They're not going to dig that up.
right.
Or they might do a small test hole somewhere to get some data or whatever. I don't know, but they've got Karahan Tepe, they've got Cyberk, they've got Chakmak Tepe. There's a whole bunch more that are being investigated right now, and there's a plan to. I mean, they've basically implemented a plan to do site surveys. So they're surveying. They're going through the whole area, looking for these mounds, because the mounds were never considered important.
Right.
Or that important, right? Until it was found out that there was megalithic architecture 15 meters down. So now they're like, we need to find every single midden pile from the PPNA
And investigate it
and at least survey it to see if there's something down there that we might want to dig up. And so now they're starting to do that, as well as like little digs on all these various different sites to sort of try to build a bigger picture of like what is really going on in the entire area. So I feel like that's more interesting than just digging up. Just let's dig up the entire site of Gobekli Tepe. Like, no, let's go around and see like what was the entire civilization up to.
Yeah, definitely. We're also out of time.
Well, dang it.
All right.
Well, we can
What did
continue
you
to talk
learn
about
in Egypt? Gobekli Tepe.
Happens every time. I try to talk pyramids with him now, and he's just like, listen, Gobekli Tepe.
Yeah, bro.
And so for people listening to my show, where can people find you?
Brothers of the Serpent is the name of the podcast. You guys can find us on any RSS feed, any Spotify, anywhere you find podcasts. We're also on YouTube. If you want to see videos, we have been publishing some visual versions of some of these conversations. And then we have, of course, a website, brothersoftheserpent.com. And you can email me, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. I do read all the emails. So
What about your band?
$50 Dynasty. You can check us out at $50dynasty.com. It's a bare bones website, but you can just listen to the album there, the Procession album. And yeah, not playing a whole lot of shows these days, Seriah. But I'm still working on music.
yeah, he's still making music.
Yeah.
Well, that last record was a killer. So
Thanks, bro. I really appreciate that.
Well,
And
you
for
should
your
tell
listeners-
people. Yeah, tell people where they can find you.
you can find me at wheredidtheroadgo.com, and that includes that last conversation. I think that's the last show Marty did before.
Yeah.
With Mike Clellan. But he's also, if you want to check out Marty on Last Exit, it's thelastexit.org. It's a metal show primarily. I mean, it's other stuff than just metal, but yeah, that was, I think, in December I had Marty on.
Excellent.
Yeah. Join
Cool,
us.
man. Thanks. Enjoyed it.
Always a pleasure, man. Thank you.